Welcome to the channel Literary Aesthetics, a place where we explore the depths of English literature through detailed summaries and thoughtful analyses. Today, we continue with Emily Bronte's timeless novel Wuthering Heights, moving on to chapters 5 and 6, where mystery deepens and the hidden past of the Heights begins to unfold. The story now flows from the events of the first 4 chapters, where we saw the initial strains within the Earnshaw family and the growing bond between Cathy and Heathcliff. Chapters 5 and 6 continue this unfolding tale, bringing new challenges, shifting moods, and key moments that define the characters' futures. Chapter 5 marks the declining health of Mr. Earnshaw, and the emotional atmosphere of the household begins to change. As Mr. Earnshaw grows weaker, he becomes increasingly attached to Heathcliff, defending him even when he behaves badly. This favoritism creates deep resentment in Hindley, who now feels displaced and unloved. Meanwhile, Catherine's bond with Heathcliff grows stronger, though she occasionally behaves rebelliously and mischievously. As Earnshaw's health worsens, so does the harmony in the home. Catherine becomes more willful, and although Mr. Earnshaw is saddened by her behavior, she remains his favorite. Eventually, Mr. Earnshaw dies quietly in his chair, leaving the household in sorrow, but also in hidden conflict. Heathcliff is devastated, while Hindley's bitterness grows, setting the stage for major changes in the Heights. New events in Chapter 5. Mr. Earnshaw's illness deepens. His attachment to Heathcliff becomes extreme. Hindley's jealousy and anger turn into long-term hatred. Catherine becomes increasingly wild and undisciplined. Mr. Earnshaw dies, causing a major emotional and power shift in the family. Chapter 6 introduces one of the first major outward adventures in the story. Hindley returns to Wuthering Heights after Mr. Earnshaw's death, now married to a young woman named Frances. His return brings a strict, harsh rule over the house. Heathcliff is immediately degraded from almost family to servant-like status. Meanwhile, one night, Catherine and Heathcliff sneak out to Thrushcross Grange, the neighboring estate belonging to the wealthy Linton family. They are curious about the elegant lifestyle of the Lintons. Inside, they see Edgar and Isabella Linton quarreling pettily over a dog. Their seemingly refined world is suddenly shown to be fragile and childish. But their adventure ends badly. The Lintons' dogs attack the children, injuring Catherine. The Lintons take Catherine inside to care for her, but they treat Heathcliff cruelly and send him away. New characters in Chapter 6. Frances Earnshaw, Hindley's young, nervous wife. Edgar Linton, the refined, gentle son of the Linton family. Isabella Linton, Edgar's sister, delicate and aristocratic. New events in Chapter 6. Hindley returns with his wife Frances and asserts strict control. Heathcliff is forced into a lower social position. Catherine and Heathcliff visit Thrushcross Grange secretly. Catherine is injured by the Lintons' dog. Catherine stays at the Grange, beginning her transformation into a lady. Heathcliff is humiliated and pushed away by the Lintons. Combined analysis of Chapters 5 and 6. These chapters mark a turning point in the novel, shifting from childhood innocence to the beginnings of social conflict, class division, and emotional tension. 1. Decline of Mr. Earnshaw and rising conflict. Mr. Earnshaw's death removes the only source of protection Heathcliff had. His excessive favoritism, though loving, plants seeds of jealousy and cruelty in Hindley. Catherine's wild nature also surfaces strongly, showing the free spirit that connects her to Heathcliff. 2. Hindley's return, the beginning of Heathcliff's oppression. When Hindley returns as the head of the family, he strips Heathcliff of equality, reduces him to a servant, and exercises petty revenge for years of resentment. This social fall becomes a psychological wound that shapes Heathcliff's future cruelty. It is the beginning of his motivations for revenge. 3. Catherine between two worlds. Catherine's injury and stay at Thrushcross Grange marks the moment she begins to drift from Heathcliff. At the Heights, she shares wildness and freedom with him. At the Grange, she learns refinement, manners, and elegance, influencing her future choices. This contrast between the raw nature of the Heights and the cultured world of the Lintons sets up the love conflict that drives the novel. 4. Introduction of the Lintons, symbol of class and civilization. The Lintons represent the civilized, wealthy class. Their polished world contrasts sharply with the chaos of Wuthering Heights. Edgar and Isabella are delicate, polite, and sheltered, but also weak, petty, and emotionally fragile. Their presence adds social tension and foreshadows Catherine's internal struggle between love for Heathcliff, desire for social elevation with Edgar. New characters introduced in these chapters are Joseph. Joseph appears earlier in the story, but in Chapter 5 his presence becomes much stronger and more influential. He is portrayed as a stern, extremely religious old servant who constantly warns everyone about sin and judgment. His harsh, moralizing attitude begins shaping the atmosphere of Wuthering Heights, especially as Mr. Earnshaw grows weaker. Joseph's constant preaching and complaints add tension to the household and influence the children's upbringing in a negative, strict way. Frances Earnshaw. Frances is introduced as Hindley's new wife when the couple returns to Wuthering Heights after Mr. Earnshaw's funeral. She is described as light-hearted, delicate, cheerful, and somewhat childish. She brings a new kind of energy to the house, though her nervous, fragile nature also makes her easily overwhelmed. Her presence softens Hindley temporarily, but her later decline plays a huge role in Hindley's transformation into a bitter, self-destructive man. The Linton family. In Chapter 6, we get our first introduction to the refined and polite world of the Lintons at Thrushcross Grange. Although each member is not separately described yet, we learn that the Lintons represent the opposite of the wild, untamed life at Wuthering Heights. Catherine and Heathcliff spy on them from outside the window and see how different their lives are, civilized, wealthy, and orderly. This glimpse into the Linton household becomes important because it influences Catherine's future choices and identity. The Lintons' dog. While not a major human character, the Linton family's watchdog plays a significant role in the scene where Catherine and Heathcliff are caught spying. The dog jumps and bites Catherine, causing the Lintons to bring her into their home to treat her injury. This moment is important because it leads Catherine to spend time at the Grange, where she begins absorbing the Lintons' gentler manners and lifestyle, one of the key shifts in her character. Main themes that we found in these chapters are death and loss. Chapter 5 centers around the illness and eventual death of Mr. Earnshaw. His decline creates an atmosphere of grief and emotional instability. This theme of death sets the tone for the entire novel, showing how deeply loss affects the characters, especially Catherine and Heathcliff, who lose the one person who protected their bond. Change in family power dynamics. With Mr. Earnshaw's death, the balance of power in the household begins to shift. Hindley returns with authority, and this signals the beginning of Heathcliff's mistreatment. The chapter introduces the theme of how power, inheritance, and authority shape relationships in the family. Religion versus morality. Joseph's strong, judgmental religious behavior becomes more pronounced. His strict beliefs and constant preaching highlight the theme of religion being used as a tool for control rather than compassion. This contrast between true morality and rigid religiosity appears throughout the novel. Civilization versus wildness. This is one of the central themes of the novel, and Chapter 6 is where it becomes clear. Thrushcross Grange represents civilization, refinement, manners, and order, the Linton world. Wuthering Heights represents wildness, raw emotions, and rough behavior, the Earnshaw world. Cathy and Heathcliff's visit to the Grange shows this contrast for the first time. Social class and inequality. Chapter 6 highlights the difference between the polite, wealthy Lintons and the rough, lower-class behaviors of Heathcliff and the Earnshaw children. Catherine begins to be influenced by the Lintons' higher social standing, which foreshadows her future conflict between love, Heathcliff, and status, Edgar Linton. Identity formation. Catherine's time at the Grange marks the beginning of her transformation. She starts absorbing refined manners and behaviors, which later creates a split in her personality, torn between her wild nature with Heathcliff and her desire for social acceptance. This chapter plants the seeds for Catherine's divided identity. Violence and revenge. Heathcliff's anger after being rejected by the Lintons and his experience of being insulted highlight the themes of violence and the desire for revenge. These emotions grow stronger in him and shape his character throughout the novel. Conclusion. Chapters 5 and 6 mark a powerful turning point in Wuthering Heights, setting the emotional and thematic foundation for the rest of the novel. With the death of Mr. Earnshaw, the fragile harmony of the household collapses, allowing Hindley to rise to power and beginning Heathcliff's long journey of suffering and resentment. At the same time, Catherine's brief stay at Thrushcross Grange exposes her to a world of refinement and privilege that contrasts sharply with the wildness of her home. This contrast plants the early seeds of her divided identity, torn between her deep, instinctive bond with Heathcliff and her growing attraction to gentility and social status. Together, these chapters introduce the conflicts of class, identity, love, and revenge that will dominate the narrative. The world of Wuthering Heights begins to split into two distinct spheres, the stormy heights and the civilized Grange, and the characters' loyalties, desires, and destinies start to shape themselves around this divide. In this way, chapters 5 and 6 serve as the emotional bridge between childhood freedom and the complex tragedies that follow, marking the beginning of the novel's deeper tensions and transformations. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy deep literary analyses, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Literary Aesthetics, where we continue our journey through Wuthering Heights chapter by chapter.